It's Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Let's talk basketball offseason with Matthew Winick, college basketball analyst and consultant. What's going on, Matthew? How are you?
How's it going, guys? Good morning.
Yeah, great to have you on with us again. Based on the big news from yesterday and the commitment of Tyron Stokes with Kansas, like, how do you see that fit? What do you like about Stokes?
Stokes is an interesting guy. I don't know if he can single-handedly prop a team up to the NCAA tournament like AJ DeBonsa basically did at BYU after Richie Saunders got hurt. Obviously, he's a very good basketball player, but I think we've kind of had our expectation for what freshmen can do a little bit, I'm not going to say fully ruined, but a little bit ruined by just how amazing the freshman class was last year.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So how close would you say he is to like an AJ DeBonsa in terms of his impact?
I mean, it's tough to say exactly. Like, he's not going to lead. I don't think he's going to lead the Big 12 in scoring or be second in the country in scoring. I don't think that's happening this go around. But obviously, he can impact the game in multiple ways. I think that he's very versatile. He's definitely more versatile than Darren Peterson was at Kansas, but obviously nowhere near the scorer. There's going to need to be a lot more around him than there needed to be around Darren Peterson from an offensive perspective.
What are some of the most impactful transfer portal commitments out of the Big 12 so far? What are the ones that have maybe stuck out to you the most?
Yeah, I'm really interested in a couple of different places. Obviously, Cincinnati starting from complete scratch. Everyone on their team right now was not on Cincinnati last year, so they're going to hope that some of those guys that they added were very impactful transfers, simply just because they had to replace absolutely everything. But I'm looking over at Texas Tech, and I'm looking at Cruz Davis from Hofstra going over to the Red Raiders because they're replacing basically all of their scoring from last year, assuming JT Toppin can't come back to return from his injury next season. He's going to have to be their best player if Christian Anderson stays in the NBA draft. And going from Hofstra, after starting his career at St. John's, where he was nothing more than a role player, he's going to have to be one of the very most impactful transfers in the country. So a lot of weight on his shoulders. I think he can do it. He's a really well-rounded guard with decent size, but he's really going to have to step up to the plate for Texas Tech and probably lead them in scoring.
Matt, I love the analytical stuff that you do at Basket Review, and NBA teams will sometimes use free throw shooting to project a player's long-term shooting ability from the three-point line, and you broke it down at the NCAA level. So tell us about this piece, what went into it, and who are the biggest names that stood out?
Yeah, for sure. Look, college basketball coaches, especially now that NIL is such a huge factor, they're looking for value. They can't pay everybody $2 million. And the reality is we look at stats, very basic stats, to try to tell us if a player is good or not when there's, 3,000 players in the transfer portal. So if you see someone shooting 29% from three, you're like, well, they can't shoot. Obviously, we're not going to take them to be a shooter. But the facts are, in a 30-game college basketball season, think about the NBA. There's 82 games. A player can struggle in 30 games and have an amazing 50 games after, and now they've kind of got that shooting percentage back up where it's meant to be. There are college basketball players who had a 29% shooting season last year that really can shoot the basketball. So the concept behind that research study was like, which guys are underrated in the market that aren't getting paid like shooters that actually can shoot. And so you look at guys all across the board. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, to go back to Texas Tech, he's someone at Illinois, shot 26% from deep at Illinois, went to UNLV, had better reps. The free throw shooting at Illinois was really good. At UNLV, he was up over 40%, and now he gets back into the power conference game at Texas Tech. It's really just these small samples. You never really know who's an elite shooter when they're only playing, 30 games and taking 100 shots.
Who's still out there right now? Like, who do you think in the portal, or maybe even from an international prospect, is intriguing to you?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people out there. There's a lot more spots for different teams than there are players available. We are low on guys that can actually be impactful pieces. You look at the transfer portal, basically all of them are in the NBA draft. Like, if Milan Momcilovic gets out of the draft, he is immediately the number one player in the transfer portal. I don't think he should. I don't think you shoot 49% from deep every year, and that's really what he does best. So I think you capitalize on that and you just go to the NBA draft. But outside of that, I'd say the best guy that is not in the NBA draft right now is Juke Harris. He's likely to go to Tennessee, but that's not certain. And then Paul McNeil, who was at NC State last year, might go back to NC State with the new coaching staff, but might follow Will Wade, his old coach at LSU. I think that he's probably the best for sure, not going in the NBA draft transfer available.
Matthew Winick, college basketball analyst for Basket Review, joining us on Big 12 today. So with that said, Matt, like, how do these teams fill their rosters the rest of the offseason? If there's nobody left in the portal, if the international pool is thin, like what's left?
It's a great question. I'm seeing good role players, quote unquote, guys that could play eighth, ninth, 10th man minutes on a power conference team, just continuing to go to mid-major programs. It's like these teams don't really care about their depth if their depth is just average. They're looking for they're much more interested in top end talent, which is why we're seeing Mark Pope go to Europe and different college coaches continuing to pluck EuroLeague guys, because I think in an era, in the transfer portal era, where you could take like a 3, 4 star freshman, develop him for a year or two, you think he's going to leave. If he doesn't play, he's going to go down a level, and if he plays well, he's going to transfer and leave. And I just think coaches are so uninterested in taking developmental freshmen right now. So it's all about who's old and who's experienced, and I think that's kind of a dangerous game. But it's really where these coaches are looking. They're looking for quick fixes. They're looking for band-aids because they don't see the value in developing a guy for 4 years, because he's just statistically not going to be there for that long.
I'm curious if you've noticed any trends in the portal this year in terms of the types of players teams are going after, the money that's being spent, strategies overall. Just kind of curious for your thoughts on that.
It's all about big men. People want bigs. It's tall, and honestly, because there's no wingspan. You think about the NBA draft, we're all about, oh, well, he's not that tall, but his wingspan is very long. We don't have wingspan data in college basketball, so all we really have is the eye test and height. Really tall guys are getting paid a really large sum of money, and it is sort of positionally like, yeah, if you're a point guard and you're 6'4", you're going to get paid more than a 6'1" point guard, but a lot of these teams are really just doing it with bigs. Like if you're 7 foot tall, you are a power conference player, unless you are extraordinarily bad. You look at Kansas and Christian Reeves. He failed at Duke. He did not succeed at Clemson, and then he went to Charleston, a lower level team in the CAA, and he was good. He wasn't a superstar, but now he's slated to start for Kansas because he is 7'2", and those guys don't grow on trees. So we are seeing just a large emphasis on, if you are really tall, we are going to take a chance on you and hope that you can figure it out at the power conference level.
All right, 3 names, Matt, I want to ask you about, just to tell us what your gut says about, are these guys in the NBA next year, or are they at a college basketball program? Christian Anderson at Texas Tech, Koa Pete, Arizona, and then Milan Momcilovic.
My gut says all 3 of them are leaving. The depth of this draft is weak. If you're Milan Momcilovic and you're a 3-point shooting specialist and you shot 49%, you're capitalizing on that. I think your value is never going to be higher. With Koa Pete, he's someone that's just so gifted athletically that I don't see why you go back to college when you're one step closer to that second contract where the real money is. With how athletic he is, he's getting a second contract, even if he really struggles in the NBA. I don't think that the NIL, or, even if he makes more NIL this year, I don't think that's the greatest long-term investment for him. And then you think about Christian Anderson. He almost entered the transfer portal and he didn't. Texas Tech has already added 3 guards, 6'3" or under. I do not think Texas Tech thinks that Christian Anderson's coming back. So my guess is all 3 are gone.
Yeah, and what do you make of the lack of early entrance in the NBA draft? How much NIL is impacting the sport overall with that?
Yeah, it's making a huge impact. If you are not someone, I mentioned the second contract piece with Koa Pete. If you're not someone that's guaranteed to have a second contract, obviously no one's guaranteed, but like 6'8", ultra athletic, multi-positional versatility. If you're a one-trick pony, if you're undersized, if you're not that athletic, you might not get that second contract in the NBA, or at least a big one. So when that's the case, that NIL payment that you're getting is one of the best transfers, especially with teams so desperate right now for transfers and just depth. You're making so much more money in the short term, and it makes sense to capitalize on that while you can.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that so many guys are coming back, especially ones that don't project as first round picks in the NBA draft.
Matthew Winick, college basketball analyst, consultant, basket review. Go check out the great work that he does and that they do. Thanks for your time as always, Matt. Be well.
For sure.
Matthew Winick joining us here. Great analysis from Matthew Winick there. Big 12 today, Big 12 radio presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.